to How to Steal Cars Part 1. Something that we wanted to present via SecNet Lab because it's a big deal, although people do not know how big of a deal it is. It's going to increase and increase over time. As we all know, your vehicles continue to become more and more wired and connected to the world around them, which means you can get out to the world and send out information from your vehicle to the world. That also means that the world can get into your vehicle, bad guys and good guys alike. In part one of this, what we're going to focus on is a device that's been in your machine, in your vehicle, for quite some time that you may not know how important it is and what can be done with that. And that device is the tire pressure monitoring system. Nearly every car that's on the road nowadays has one. They've been popular since the 80s. Since the 80s, and there's a law that says vehicles have to be made with a TPMS. In the year 2000, the Transportation Recall Enhancement and Accountability TREAD Act required that all new vehicles have a TPMS system installed. What it does is it improves road safety. It tells drivers about their underinflated tires and things of that nature. So when you see that tire gauge come up that says, "Hey, the tire pressure is too low," that's what that is. That's the TPMS. It's a small device that's located on the wheel well of your tire that communicates with the rest of your system wirelessly. It can communicate through regular UHF over, I think, in nowadays in America, is communicating at about 315 megahertz, and in Europe it communicates over 433 megahertz. So these are RF signals that use amplitude shift keying and frequency shift keying. For those who don't know, the difference is amplitude is kind of peaks and valleys, and frequency is exactly what it is, how many times it goes through that cycle. That's how that's measured. We'll get more into that. But that's how it communicates. Another way it started communicating recently is via Bluetooth, because rather than people just getting tire information and looking at it on a screen, your cars are starting to talk to you and tell you via voice. Siri might tell you, "Hey, your tire's too low," and Siri might further say, "By the way, there's a gas station right here, here, and there." So you can even talk to GPS. Kind of more, a little bit more advanced than what it used to be. Now it's event triggering instead of alert triggering. It's using the alert to trigger an event. That's not every car. That's the more advanced cars. Now, TPMS is interesting because it's a great device to hack, right? Via the old school way of what we call eavesdropping. You could simply use a radio receiver to eavesdrop and listen on that frequency. Figure out what type of and gather what information is being sent. You'd of course have to download those packets because it's not like it's audio information. What you'll get in a TPMS packet is the sensor ID, pressure, temperature, any flags, to checksum, and a preamble. The sensor ID is most important because those are unique. They're usually a 28 or like 32 bit. It's unique to each sensor that's registered with that particular ECU, which is an engine control unit. Now, I want to explain to you why that's important. You can do a multitude of things if you can find out a vehicle's unique sensor ID. If you wanted to track a person and be sure who you were tracking, or be sure of which car you were tracking, you could do so by knowing that sensor ID. Say you're a government looking to capture or assassinate a bad guy, you can verify that that's the correct vehicle via that unique sensor ID. If you use the TPMS and other information to get into the infotainment system that has all the cameras and hooks up to the Android phones and the iPhones and all of that stuff, you can even probably get those cameras to turn inward, look around that car, and verify that whoever your target is actually in the vehicle. There's a lot you can do with knowing the sensor ID if you will, if you need to. It's very, very interesting. Now, you're taking a guess, right? Because there's obviously a TPMS. There's one in each tire. So you would want to know, you want to be able to communicate with the TPMS device on each tire and verify the sensor ID for each one. And then you can be pretty sure, okay, this is the car. This is the one I'm targeting. But you can use things like G and U radio, SDR, to track frequency spectrum analyzers, oscopes, all that old school radio type of stuff to learn more about the vehicle. Now that is not something that your average person is going to do, but it's doable because all the information is out there. You can see these. You can pull these up on screens and start to see those frequencies and match up those frequencies, and you could determine which one's the high and which one's the low and what's the peak, things like that. Use something like a GQRX, right? You just go to gqrx.dk. Yeah, pretty good software for that. HackRF, there's a lot of software out there, a lot of things out there, a lot of hardware devices out there great for hacking. So as we just discussed, you can use TPMS to gather information about the vehicle or to use it as an entry point to communicate with the rest of the vehicle. You can also use it to communicate with, say, key fobs. Let's talk about key fobs. The way key fobs used to work is it used to be just only frequency based. So that means it was easy to hack it. You could simply record the chirp chirp and replay it back and almost unlock anybody else's car. That was back in the day. Most key fobs are not made that simple anymore, so it's not as easy to attack key fobs in that way. Now they kind of use rolling code and challenge response, so you can't just record and play back. It expects you to send something back to communicate with between the key fob and the car, between you and the key fob, and of course that requires more RF power and things of that nature. But again, it's still one way to get in. There's also the option of jamming it. Say you just want to mess with somebody by jamming their key fob signal or their TPMS signal. Here's an example. A lot of signals are used to determine when I'm pulling in. Say you're pulling into your driveway and you want your garage to automatically open once it recognizes that it's you, that it's your car with your unique sensor ID. All that stuff could be connected. If you start jamming it, what if you kept a person from being able to park it in their own garage? Wouldn't it be a fun trick? Now, if you're more malicious, what if you kept that person from being able to close their garage after they're in the garage so that you could have an easier access to the house? So in order to kind of think of these things, you kind of have to think like someone who's malicious. Which ways could we enter and how would we enter? TPMS is one way to enter and start communicating with a vehicle that's not yours. You can start sending signals to that vehicle on the same frequency. You can start overpowering that TPMS signal so that person isn't getting the tire information. You can become really, really, really unsafe. But we'll talk some more about some tricks of the trade and some additional ways in which you can take advantage of the tire pressure monitoring system in order to hack vehicles in the next part, and we'll add other entities in the vehicle and get to digging, and we'll talk about some of the tools and show you some of the tools too. And meanwhile, thank you for listening. Make sure you guys subscribe and go out to segnetlab.net and check out the site. Subscribe via YouTube at SegNetLab. And feel free to ask any questions in the comments, because I'm always open to questions. I'm always open to ideas on how you would hack. As usual, as a disclaimer, it's illegal. What we do is for educational purposes only, and to help things improve, get better, and more secure.